Hi and welcome. So today I want to share with you a bit more about triggers and your emotional eating pattern and how we can use them to resolve this. So if you're new here, welcome. My name is Michelle. I'm a certified holistic nutritionist specializing in emotional eating. And I wanted to talk about triggers. I think that when we are emotional eaters, we might think we have a trigger food and we need to keep that food out of our house. We have triggering things happening all around us. And what we might do is just try to avoid them. So a lot of the surface solutions might say, don't have that food in the house, avoid certain situations. But it's not as simple as that. When we avoid it, it doesn't mean we're actually resolving this pattern. And so emotional eating is really multi-layered. It's a coping mechanism, and triggers are our gateway to our liberation from this pattern. It's actually giving us a lot of information about what we need to do moving forward. So triggers are sort of situations that come up or instances or people, it can change and vary. It can be a food, it can be a situation, but essentially a trigger is just giving us sort of the tip of the iceberg of what's going on, kind of giving us some awareness that we can use to dive deeper. So when I work with clients, something that we're doing and exploring in the emotional eating evolution program are their triggers. So when are they triggered into their emotional eating? And, what is sort of the circumstance? What is sort of happening? What are the foods they go to? So I don't really believe that there's a food that triggers us into emotional eating. What I would say about foods is that once we start going to that food, and usually as emotional eaters, when we're in this sort of emotional eating spiral, we are drawn to processed foods. We have certain foods we want to instantly have. And as we're consuming them, because they're processed foods, they're not nutrient dense. They don't really satisfy our hunger on multiple levels. And they're designed to have us consume a lot of it, that we are then eating this food and we think like, I'm out of control with this food, but we have to go deeper. We have to look at what actually triggered, what instigated, what started this pattern. And so that can be a bit, I don't want to say complex, it's multi-layered. Like I mentioned, emotional eating is multi-layered, and what we've been sold to is that there's one magic bullet, there's one simple thing, do the surgery, take the pill, and it gets rid of this issue. And I've spoken to so many women that these things, they don't work. When you have the surgery or you take the prescription and you're still having thoughts about food in your body, obviously it's no longer something's wrong with my body and my appetite and my hunger. There's something deeper going on. And until we resolve those deeper levels, we won't resolve this pattern. So what I want to share with you in terms of triggers is to really start thinking about them as the gateway, as sort of like information that's going to help us dive deeper. And so when I work with clients, we have to work through a model. We have to work through a framework to really pinpoint what are your triggers, what's really going on for you, what's your pattern. You want to understand your own pattern, and this is going to be important because it's going to help you really see what's going on with your emotional eating. It's going to help you really understand what's been going on for you. And so I mentioned earlier, emotional eating is a coping mechanism. That means that we use food to soothe or numb out from any uncomfortable emotions, distress that's happening in our life. It's the way we deal with that. This pattern didn't just happen yesterday. It's a pattern that would have started in childhood. When I work with clients and we do the deeper work, this pattern always begins in childhood, and it doesn't look like you sitting around eating 5 bags of potato chips. It looks very different. So what we're seeing on the surface with our emotional eating is not necessarily, and I would say 99% of the time, it looks so different when we get to the root. And we have to think, this pattern, if I'm just looking at the surface, you won't consciously know exactly what's going on. And even if you've gone to therapy and you've worked through a lot of issues, it's still not resolved if it keeps coming up and playing out. So I hear from women who've gone to therapy for years and years. They might really be aware of their patterns and what happened to them or worked through it. And this is still coming up. And this is why we need to look at all aspects of this pattern. We need to look at all the different triggers. And a really great place to start is to really start noticing, when are you drawn to your emotional eating pattern? Where are you? What time of day is it? Who are you around? What foods do you go to? That's not telling you it's the food to blame or the person or the environment, but there's something there that we can then start looking at and start seeing the pattern. Of course, when I work with clients through the Emotional Eating Evolution program, we're really working through this in 3 key main areas. So we're looking at your relationship to food and how you're nourishing yourself, because there are triggers there that can create emotional eating. If we're restricting the foods we have, if we're sort of depriving ourselves physically, that can trigger binging. And that's not necessarily true emotional eating, but we might be into binging and then our brain is on the hunt for calories. But once we start shifting that and we start nourishing our body, so we start looking at the triggers around food and we shift that, and we sort of eliminate that trigger, and we're truly nourishing our body, we can actually see where our emotional eating triggers are coming up, the true ones. Because here we're actually eating in a nourishing way. We are, checking in with our true hunger cues, and we're looking at our diet mentality and how we view food and what are our restrictions around food that might be pushing us into our emotional eating pattern. So whenever we have limiting beliefs or we punish ourselves or shame ourselves, we can be triggered into our emotional eating pattern. And so these thoughts come up around food. They're not necessarily about the types of foods you're eating, but it is about the food. The second area we're going to look at is around your body. This is another key area I see with clients that can trigger them into their emotional eating. When they feel shame about their body, when they feel out of control, so on a physical level, if we're not honoring our body's needs, that can trigger more binging and more mood issues, which triggers emotional eating. But it's not necessarily true emotional eating. Our physical needs and our rhythms of our body hasn't been met, and that can trigger us. And so when we start shaming ourselves and going into that spiral and being really critical, that triggers that deeper emotional eating pattern. And then, of course, in the third area, around our emotions, we're looking at the actual true emotional triggers to our emotional eating, the pattern, the deepest pattern that has created this, that is making us go to food, thinking that that's going to solve this issue or soothe us, or what our brain thinks. It's our automatic reaction. And here, we need to look at what maybe shame we feel around certain emotions, what emotions we're repressing, we're holding in, we don't know how to actually move through. And this layer is where we can really deal with the deepest root of the trigger. So we use the trigger here to go deeper into the actual situation that's happening, resolving it, meeting our true needs so we can move forward powerfully. So food will no longer be a band-aid. We're actually moving through life. We're actually, looking at what's under the food. And so that's how we can use triggers. Triggers are not meant to be avoided. Triggers are not meant to be something that we don't ever look at, or we say something's wrong with that. Triggers are actually a gift. They're really important. They're really vital. They're giving us awareness. They're almost telling us, here's where you need to look. And it's not that we need to look on the surface. It's just the trigger is sort of giving us the general area we need to look at to go deeper. And so inside of the Emotional Eating Evolution program, we're looking at where the triggers are coming from and what would be the solution or resolution to it on multiple levels. So if we need to shift in terms of our relationship to food or our body, or do the deeper work around our emotions, so we're diving deeper into that core issue that keeps coming up, that keeps being triggered at this deeper level, and we're resolving it. And so we do that with really deep tools inside of the Emotional Eating Evolution program. When we get to that deepest layer with the somatic meditations, it's a trauma-informed modality, and we're really diving deep. So the whole sort of goal, if you will, of the program is to resolve your emotional eating from the root, to look at all aspects. You know, the solutions that I tried when I was going through my own emotional eating journey were very much on the surface. So it looked like I was tapping into things. You know, I had a nutritionist and I had a trainer and I was going to talk therapy, but it didn't actually shift at this deeper root. And that's what I see with a lot of women. We're doing the solutions that are out there that are conventionally given to us. And there's not an in-depth understanding of this pattern and what's really needed to shift it. And so that's the goal of this program. And we've had amazing results with clients to really start seeing their deeper pattern and being able to resolve it. So when we really see what's going on and understand it and have the right tools, we can shift it at this root level. So if you have any questions about what I've shared today about triggers, please let me know below. If what I'm saying is resonating for you and you are just ready to resolve your emotional eating from the root, then I'd love to invite you to find out more about the Emotional Eating Evolution Program. So this is my step-by-step methodology. It's a 12-week container. In the container, you have lots of support and accountability. You have the in-depth somatic meditations to move through your emotional eating pattern at the root. And so this supportive container is going to help you get to your goal of feeling at ease in your body and around food. So I'd love to invite you to find out more at the link below. And then the next step after that would be, if it's resonating for you, is to book in an emotional eating clarity call. And so on that call, we find out more about you, what your goals are, what you've tried, and how we can help you bridge the gap, or if we can even help you. So I just want to say thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe, and I look forward to sharing more with you, and I hope you have a great day.